Oh. Today's story is about this Trek FX Sport 3 aluminum bike, and essentially why I chose it over a carbon fiber bike. I'm going to get into details about it, including the actual frame itself, the design of this package, the component specifications, and go on a little bit of an industry rant about why big companies such as Trek make it so difficult for the local bike shops. If you look at this garage and everything that surrounds me, I can see 13 bikes. This bike gets the most riding time of any bike in here. It is my wife's commuting bike. It's probably now about an 8 to 9-year-old specialized roll, and it's got one fatal flaw. This beast weighs almost 38 pounds with the panniers emptied. The goal of this project is to take 10 pounds off the weight of her commuting bike. And trust me, there is a 15% grade right out my front door that you have to climb up to get to this house. So that will be greatly appreciated, I'm sure. If you look at Trek's lineup, the AL3 comes in at roughly 1,200 Canadian dollars. And if you upgrade to the carbon fibered FX SL4, it comes in at roughly 2,250 Canadian dollars. That's over $1,000 just to get a carbon fiber frame. There's slightly better aluminum handlebars on it. There's slightly better wheel spec, but otherwise it's pretty much the same. So the question is, what could I do with $1,000 with the aluminum bike to make it better or lighter than the carbon fiber bike? After consultation with the local bike shop, I went with the aluminum model with upgrades in the plans. A lot of the faults and stuff I'm going to talk here are solely on Trek. And when a local bike shop, which has probably only got a margin of a couple of $100 on this bike, sends it out, they're probably not going to pick up everything, which is why they offer 1 year's free service. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go back to the local bike shop, and they're fully aware that I'm tearing this thing apart. Initial review. In some ways, what I'm doing here is buying a frame and a carbon fork. I'll get into some of the questions I have about Trek's spec, but you've essentially got quick release wheels with formula hubs, not surprising, pretty generic spokes, wire bead tires, butyl tubes. They're Schrader, which I think is a nice touch for a commuter bike. You've got a generic seat post, a pro wheel crank, and we all know that pro wheel cranks weigh a ton, so that's likely going to disappear. Generic aluminum bar and stem. This is going, but these are sort of your standard baseline Shimano brake levers. There's nothing wrong with them. The issue is, the way they're set up from the shops is this is like 3 or 4 finger braking. Remember, my hands are large. Also, the shifter should typically be mounted on this side, not this side. The other issue with a lot of bike shops is they tend to set the levers up too low or down. The lever should be more in about this angle right here to avoid hand fatigue. There is an absolute ton of tire clearance here. I think it's no problem to get a 50 in here, which is what I exactly plan on doing. There is plenty of bosses and water bottle mounts, rack mounts, accessory mounts. And I actually like that they haven't put a bolt in here. They just put a blank. Things catch on the bolts. And of course, they weigh a lot. There's a really neat fender mount in here. Kind of reminds me of the old Ibis brake stop mounts from probably about 20, 30 years ago. I think they called them hand jobs. Lots of accessory mounts here. I think I'm going to use that one for the rack. And if you can look down in there, there's a fair bit of tire clearance. Enough for certainly a 50. The weight is exactly 25 pounds in its stock configuration. You never realize how much this crap weighs. We dropped 0.2 of a pound by just getting rid of all that reflective crap. A question. Assuming that you have bought this bike for your wife, and trust me, I'm talking to 99% men here. The demographics don't lie. Would you accept that cable squeaking in the internally routed cables? Would you try to fix it yourself, or would you take it back to the local bike shop? Now that I have the frame stripped, let's go through all the issues. First of all, internal cable routing. That sound is no different than when I had it built up. So we're going to have to fix that. Post mount front for the win. With direct mount in the rear. Why couldn't you make them the same? The next thing is the cable routing. You can see the cables come out of an open hole here in the bottom bracket, and then are daylighted. What was the point of internal cable routing? You could have just simply put them in here in ports, and we could have avoided all the trouble and run the cables down the fork. I've never seen anything like it, but this is their design of a front skewer. So this end remains on, and then you unscrew this to remove the wheel. I don't know why a through axle here or a traditional quick release wouldn't have worked. Once again, quick release in the rear, and that dreadful screw off thing in the front. Now let's get a little closer in here. I can assure you that is not a paint overspray, that is just purely painted. So there wasn't a lot of finishing on this frame. I can also assure you that if you look closely at the brake mounts, that's got a coating of paint on it too. They're not faced or finished in any way. I'm not going to adjust them. It's the same for the front too. But I'm not going to clean these up because the brakes are fine, they're aligned, and everything is okay. And finally, when I took everything apart, that's what I found. When you have the quick release in, it holds it tight, so that's why the bike shop missed it, and I missed it on first inspection. But Trek should have had that tightened right off the bat. There's some sort of plastic collar here that just spins freely. And there's just the tiniest bit of play in the crank. Craps and giggles, I was replacing the Pro Wheel crank, but the person at Trek did not put any preload on that crank when they installed it. That was the issue. Hey, look. We got a Hambini bottom bracket on our hands. I can do for upgrades for $1,000. There's two classes of upgrades. One is performance and two is weight. Everything you see on the rack and those two wheels, what's left on them, stays other than the carbon fiber seat post. And if we come and look over here, that is the bin of parts that I'm replacing to be replaced by these parts. Let's look at everything we swapped. We've got the original butyl tubes, and for a 201 gram savings, we're putting in TPU tubes that are from Lipse in Germany. These are the folks that actually make, contrary to my last video, the silica tubes. So when changing this, these are 270 gram aluminum bars, which really isn't bad. And we're changing them out for these lightweight carbon bars that are too short for modern standards, but way too wide for a commuter, so I'll have to cut these down a bit. So we're losing about 110 grams. And there's no cost to these. These were in my junk drawer. These are quite possibly the biggest piece of crap on the bike, these pedals. We're actually going to gain 54 grams to put on these high quality one-up platform pedals. These are for serious commuters only. As for grips, we're going to go up to the one-up narrow grips for tiny hands. These would fit my large mitts rather than someone who's on a size small bike's hands. There's nothing wrong with these grips though. This is the bottom bracket that's spun just so nicely. We're going to add 8 grams and replace it with this Hambini bottom bracket. This is one of the, I don't know what Hambini called it, but lower quality bottom brackets that he made. I'm quite excited to try this. The one comment I'm going to make though is he says it's stiffer than other bottom brackets because there's not this wimpy plastic sleeve in between. And instead it's a solid aluminum contact, but you can see how that still moves. I don't know if that's true or not, but heck, my wife gets to ride a Hambini. Don't light me up in the comments. The only reason that I put 0 in there is because there's no reason to replace the existing bottom bracket. I put the Hambini in just because it was laying around and I wanted to see it used. This is the Pro Wheel stock crank. It's really actually not that bad. It comes with a 40-tooth drop stop chainring, which is a nice touch. But considering that crank is 170 mils on a small bike, that's not fair. So I'm giving this bike a 36-tooth for a lower gear, wolf tooth chainring. These things cost a bloody small fortune, with a GRX 165 mil 600 series crank. And that ends up saving me, see if I can get that right, 123 grams. Excluding the guard that's no longer going to be on there to save your pant legs, which is another 44 gram loss. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the 201 series brake levers for a commuter bike, except when you have a small bike and you have small hands. I'm actually going to add a bit of weight here, and I got these used drawer levers. They don't have a hand adjustment on them, but they'll fit smaller hands quite a bit nicer. And I consider this a significant upgrade in ergonomics. The Q's 10-speed shifter, although it's quite large compared to the XT, they pretty much weigh the same. And what blew me away, if you look, is they both have the high quality coated cables on it, even on a lower end group. Here we have the 10-speed 1148 cassette which came with the bike. We're going to lose only 34 grams, but going to an 11-speed link glide with the 1050 on it to give a little bit more gear range. The Q's rear derailleur looks pretty beefy, but gives up 76 grams to the XT Link Glide rear derailleur. Also, you got more durability here. This will have sealed bearings on the pulley wheels, where these are probably just, yeah, that's just a bushing in there or something. That is the stock 10-speed chain and an 11-speed Link Glide chain. Once I remove the links from this, there'll be no difference in weight and probably no difference in wear resistance either. The biggest single weight savings is the seat post. The carbon seat post on the bike weighs this much right here. Going from a 40 mil tire to a 50 mil Pathfinder TRL is a complete wash as far as weight goes. I can't think of a better commuter tire. Beware. Link Glide XT has a serious weight penalty when you compare it to, your standard XT. Yes, I know I got the carrier in there. It's probably almost 200 grams. So I got the genius idea of fixing this axle thing from Trek by just putting a normal quick release on. This is one I got on Amazon for about 10 bucks. This does not work. But what I ended up doing is getting a higher quality DT Swiss one. You see how this moves around? This is a solid piece, and this works perfectly fine because you can tighten it quite easily. Let's try this. What a novel concept. See, I can just use that like a normal quick release now. Reminds me, if you're older, the Ringley quick releases in the old days. This Link Glide system is designed to be durable. Now, I've got a GRX crank on the front of it here, but my point is it shifts like the pinnacle of pre-Hyperglide XTR. Not bad, but you can't compare it to Hyperglide. I'm holding off on letting my wife experience Hyperglide Plus. This Link Glide is completely adequate. But let me tell you, like for instance, say I started taking part in what I call e-recreational dysfunction, riding one of them emasculation bikes around. Well, I wouldn't put Link Glide on it for more durability because of the higher loads. I'd just burn through Hyperglide because it's so good. The next observation I'm going to make is, and whoever built this frame, I've had some issues with it, but the bottom bracket, both cups screwed right in there effortlessly, and I torqued them up. That's what you typically expect on high-end bike frames, not on a frame this level. One thing about BSAs, even with a Hambini bottom bracket in, is regardless of what you do, there's not going to be a perfect spin test, but that's pretty damn good, I'd say, and was a little bit better than when I tried it with the stock BB. When I had to faff around with the cables, I lubed and added extra grease to the top and bottom bearings, which seemed to be relatively high quality. No issues there. But the issue with the headset and why it was making noise with the internal cable routing was that they actually, it blew me away, had a foam shroud on the rear brake and rear shifter cable, and it had slipped down into the tube. So at the junction between the down tube and the top tube, the two cables were rubbing past each other. It took me a while to figure that out while I was faffing around with the internal front brake cable. But what I ended up doing is carefully getting the foam out and just slightly into the head tube. And as you can see now, there's no more sound here. And my wife had noticed that sound when she was riding, saying the bike was squeaking. So it was obviously an issue. Before I put all that commuting crap on the bike, I want to give you, let's call it the raw weight with the upgrades on it. So there she is dangling. And let me just get a little closer here. We are at a little under 23.5 pounds. So we dropped about 1.3 pounds. I'd like to thank Specialized for making such a good tire. These 50 Pathfinders were so well received that when it was requested to put on this fender set, and it was pointed out that we'd have to go back to the stock tires, I was able to take the fender set off. And
I don't know if you've talked to many bike mechanics, but one of the things that they hate more than any other activity they do is installing fenders. And I can certainly understand exactly why. Trek, you should be ashamed of yourself. It probably took me 5 minutes just to get all the paint out of this bolt hole and many of the other bolt holes I was faffing around with on this bike. You need to mask things off way better. With all the accessories on this bike, except for panniers, we are over, let's see what's that, 25.4. We're about 13 pounds lighter. Now the panniers I've got weigh about 4 pounds, so we're close to our 10-pound goal for a weight reduction. If I was doing this again, I would replace, obviously, the brake levers because of hand size, new carbon bars, the carbon seat post. I wouldn't change the XT link drivetrain in. I wouldn't worry about that. The drivetrain on was perfectly adequate. What I would have done is put a mountain bike crankset on here with a 32 tooth 11-speed chainring on it. That would have been just fine. And of course, I would have changed the tubes and tires. The tires are a huge upgrade on this bike. And I'll make a comment that the main test reviewer on this loves these tires compared to the stock tires and tires she has on her other commuting bikes. So, you know, happy wife is equal to a happy life. Living in a town where unfortunately bike theft is a problem, everyone needs one of these bikes. This is, I think, a 30-year-old Kona, and the drivetrain on it was absolutely done. So I had an ulterior motive. I knew that the drivetrain, which I could sell for exactly nothing, let's say on Pink Bike, was going straight on this bike. And maybe it'll be a topic for another video, but the sad thing was, it took me only an hour and a half to strip off the old drivetrain and put this new drivetrain on, including the cranks, and tune it. It's insane compared to a modern bike.
1,250 Canadian for 1.3 pounds may sound ridiculous. The good news, though, is about half that money didn't go towards weight reduction. It went towards durability and performance upgrades, particularly considering the bike had longer cranks on it, larger grips, and crappy brake levers when you consider tiny hands operating them. If you look at the stock specs, the bike that I have modified is lighter than the more expensive carbon model, with, in my mind, much better components.
I asked you a question earlier about how you'd handle this with the local bike shop. I can tell you right now, my wife noticed this immediately, that it was squeaking, and said it bothered her. So if I was an uneducated consumer without trillions of dollars in tools like I've got, it would go straight back to the local bike shop. Now, say I wasn't replacing the brake levers and all that. To figure this out for an experienced mechanic, because they wouldn't do, I did a lever bleed. They would do a full-on rebleed of the brakes. It's probably going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours for a competent mechanic to get this fixed. Trek, thanks a lot for creating a problem that no one exactly asked for ever, even on Tuesday. Summing up, would I buy this bike again? Absolutely. I think the upgrades that I've made are far better than going for a carbon frame with slightly better components. I really think that we have to be careful about indemnifying the big brands like Trek and Specialized and that from their designs and their fit and finish. This bike, obviously, with this internal headset routing, which exactly no one wants on a commuting bike, and this faffing around with some sort of new innovative quick release when they could have just put through axles front and rear on this bike and maybe charged us $50 more. I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself, Trek, because you're also creating potential warranty and screwing around problems for bike shops that provide free maintenance for a year to their customers. Obviously, in the case of this bike, if I wasn't a skilled home mechanic, this would have come back and you would have probably spent a couple of hours screwing around with it to make everything hunky-dory and get rid of that squeak. Totally inappropriate. Now here's where I get the positive. I have looked through this bike, replaced everything, and looked at all the bits and pieces that make up this bike. And for the price point, it represents a significant value. I didn't find any crappy component on this bike other than the pedals, and the pedals are fair enough. Most people change their pedals. Maybe they put clipless on, maybe they want a platform with a lot of meat on it. It's all good. So look, with that, if you have a comment, a question, you just want to vent, there's the comment section down below. As always, please like the video, consider subscribing, and look, the weather's absolutely fantastic out, so ride hard.